Greetings. I'm Scott Usher. I'm the creative director here at Havenlight, and this is Havenlight Artist Spotlight, and we are here in the studio today with Tyler Pack. Tyler, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're really excited to have you here, significantly because we've never had you here, but also because we're doing our first show at the Havenlight Gallery during February with your original artwork, and we're going to be covering a bunch of that today.
Awesome.
All right, so tell me a little bit about yourself. You are a full-time artist, but you're also a full-time teacher.
Yep. Yeah, full-time, double-time.
Full-time, double-time.
I'm a high school art teacher. I teach actually a variety of subjects. So I teach art history, and Italian at Lone Peak High School. And then at night, usually when the kids go to bed, I'm an artist.
You see kids with talent, what are you telling them?
Oh, I tell them to just go for it. Like, just follow their aspirations, follow their dreams, like, be excited about it. I got some great advice from my dad, who was a doctor, so totally and different end of the spectrum as far as what he did. But he told me when I was kind of going into college, trying to figure out my major, and he told me, you're going to do this, whatever you decide to do, you're going to do for the rest of your life. Until retirement. And then at your retirement, you're old and decrepit and you're done and you're just, trying to enjoy some family life and grandkids. He said, you're going to do it every single day. You better find something that you enjoy doing or you're going to be really miserable. And I was like, okay. Because,
follow your passion, never work a day in your life.
Yeah, exactly. He told me, he said, do something that you're going to love, because having a job that's just to make the bones, just to make the money, you're going to be miserable. You're going to hate your job, and you might make a lot of money, but you're going to be really miserable. And he said, so find something that you're going to be enjoying.
So were you the kid, were you drawing on the walls? Were you the insatiable creator?
I wasn't drawing on walls, but definitely lots of paper in our house and lots of pencils and crayons. And my siblings seemed to draw on the walls more than I did, which I was grateful for because I wasn't the one getting in trouble. But I drew from get-go, from 2 years old. My mom was like, oh, you know how to draw. Cool. Let's get him into lessons.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And again, I call it 15% magic. And it's just that thing. And it's towards the thing that you're inclined to be. People that ended up being actors had that 15% of time that they always put themselves on stage. Yep. Driven to do it. Better way to say it. Driven to draw all the time. Driven to heal, driven to engineer, driven to do numbers. It's that 15% of magic that lets you know this is the path you're supposed to be traveling down to get to point X. Still life, when you get yourself, it's not a thin little place. It's actually, once you kind of go down that road, it's a space that opens up into far more than your average person is thinking.
Yeah.
Why do you get attracted to the still life space?
Well, great question. I think initially it was one day I was actually in the Met. I was a student at BYU. And we went on a trip to New York to visit a bunch of illustrators and to just go to museums. And I remember seeing a couple Dutch still lifes that just blew my mind. I was just like, how did they paint that? That is insane. That is crazy. That's like one hairbrush, right? And then you realize, that's how they were painting. The Jan van Eycks have been painting that way since the 1400s. Like, they were just incredible. So I saw that and I was like, wow, that was insane. I was struck by it. It's just like how somebody can communicate so much in a still life painting.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that for years. That's what all the Dutch still life artists were doing. Everything had a symbol. It all meant something. Way more than just, a bowl of fruit or a, skull and a hourglass, right? They were all meant.
Memento mori.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that stuck out to me. And then I just really fell in love with still life for practical reasons. I'm a teacher, so I paint at night. I'm not going to call over a model to come and like sit in my, that would be really expensive, and I only have a few hours to paint, and so that would be really frustrating and hard. I can set up a still life, and I can come back to it multiple times, and then it's just always there, unless I have to change out some fruit because it gets old. Yeah, it's always there for me, and it's bright, and it's vibrant, and it's beautiful, and it speaks to so many different people. The people that understand the symbolism, it speaks to them, maybe on a deeper level. But even just aesthetically, it's like, that's gorgeous. I love it.
Let's talk nomenclature for a second.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things. One, you paint and compose wonderfully, and I'll say, not that anybody can do that. You got to be good, so you have good.
Thank you.
But I think then rolling in a language that is, one, you may not see it right away, but the second you start getting to hear the backgrounds and everything else like that, you take someone like a Jim Christensen, his nomenclature was crazy obvious. He would do these, floating fish, checkerboard square for playing Field of Life, and, you'd hit all those different things. Your nomenclature is slightly more subtle, but it runs just as deep.
I hope so. Yeah, that's the goal.
So you've got the show that you're working on now, which is Simplicity Made Sacred, which to me is, again, just kind of, okay, you're just saying right away, I've got a whole nomenclature thing here going on. And when you look at what you're looking at with these different pieces, we've got a couple different levels of things going on here. So you talked, your first thing I think people would look at in here is they'd see all the Delft design stuff. But even the blue and the white carries a lot of extra stuff that, unless you know your Old Testament really well, you may or may not pick up on.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that there's some cool things about Delft. I really love one. It's just beautiful. Like, it's just a side. It's timeless. There's an element that everybody
Surface.
You just look right. It just you look at it. But also there's some elements about there's some classical element. Dutch still life painting. Always going back to that element of Dutch still life painting was always about showing Christian symbols, but in a way that was really subtle. Unless you knew it, which they did. Yeah. People that were buying it knew it, but it was really subtle. And so, you have these elements of the color, the placement, the vanitas element to it, of this memento mori, right? Things don't last. Yeah. But also it lasts a long time, because Delft is it still is a popular item to this day. People still clamor for it.
Over 500 years old of clamoring. Yeah. So you get, and again, like I say, so you've got this classic look, this beautiful feel. You can design around it. It sits in all these different places, But again, white is purity. Mary was blue. Yeah. Blue and white. The Israeli flag is blue and white. That's definitely long-term sacred colors. Yeah. So right away you've got that little door you get to walk through. And then what you start pairing with that can put yet another level in what's going on. Bread is popular and interesting. Bread's got a lot of other meanings as well.
So many symbols. So many. Yeah. So many symbols. Bread is gosh, it's almost emphatically presented in terms of what it represents. If you read any of the Bible, that's just there. Yeah. It's just all over the place. But I love painting it in a way that still can speak to, hey, this is a pretty picture that I can hang in my kitchen because it's just bread, and I love bread because it tastes so good and it looks so good and I want to eat it. But then on the next level, they look at it and they're like, that reminds me of Jesus. That reminds me of, sacrament. That reminds me of manna. That reminds me of that depth there. And so, yeah, I love bread. It's
broken
awesome.
bread versus whole bread. Does it have any difference to you in what you're presenting in that space?
I think a little bit. I think the broken bread piece has some elements there. I think one, just aesthetically, it's really pretty when you tear open a piece of bread. It just has this texture and interest in there that's really fun to look at and fun to paint. But yeah, I guess if you break a piece of bread, that all of a sudden takes on a lot more meaning, right?
Yeah, got a little bit of the body.
Yeah. And so there's some piece, a piece that I did of the some bread that's been broken. I had an interesting thought as I was kind of thinking about broken bread, and I was like looking up what that means, because I already know from a very surface level, like, you break the bread, like the sacrament, the idea, but also I had this thought about breaking bread with somebody is like inviting them into your home. And I looked it up, and it also talked about like reconciliation. Like, let's break bread, as in like we've probably had an impasse, and now
having a meal together be symbolic would be, without a doubt.
Of that. And I was like, what? Like, that means broken bread has this reference to like having like reconciliation with God, and like it like blew my mind. I was like, well, yeah, like that's the atonement. That's the like idea of like coming back into the presence of the Lord and being like welcome back into. That's like break bread, and then the body of Christ, and it just like. There's so many symbols to this. This is so cool. I love it. So,
and I thought it was just bread.
I thought it was just bread, right?
Which is
still great.
What does Wonder Bread mean?
I know, right? Which is just bread.
That's AI.
It's sliced
that doesn't
bread.
count.
It's good as sliced bread.
No, so you have So there's a piece that you can see at the Haven Light Gallery that was previously in the International Show. It's like the last piece that we've had come in, and you have a cool story behind it. It's the three loaves. Tell me a little bit about that piece.
Okay, so the theme for the International Show was to help the hands that hang low, right? This idea about service and like taking care of your fellow man. And so I was coming up with ideas of what I wanted to submit to that show, and I always consult with my wife on everything. Like, she's my muse on so many levels, and we were talking about what we could do, and the idea of bread came up, of how to do that. And she bakes loaves. She loves to bake bread. In fact, she just baked some the other day, and we delivered it to a neighbor. We love doing that. It's always nice to have fresh baked bread.
Yeah.
And so I thought, let's do like a piece about bread, and the idea of, we could have a still life, set it up, the bread sitting on, this kind of altar space of like sacrifice. And she said, well, let's bake the loaves, and then you can deliver them, and we can keep one of them, and you paint them, and we'll deliver it out. And then you can tell the story about like how your family loves to like bake bread and deliver the extra bread and all this. Well, as I was painting it, one night, in the middle of the night, I get up with back pain. And I'm thinking like, okay, what is this? Like, I think maybe it could be just like, okay, maybe it's just cramps.
Old man moment.
Old man moment, right? Like, which happens more than often now. Maybe it's like gas pain. Maybe it's just like something's wrong. I don't know what. And the pain doesn't go away, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. And finally I'm like, in the fetal position in the middle of the night. My wife is like, what's going on? And I'm like, something's wrong, like my back. And I think, maybe, is it an appendix? I don't know what it's like to have appendicitis.
But it felt like something
was wrong.
Yeah.
And she said she knew as soon as she looked at me. She's like, oh, I bet it's a kidney stone. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but sure.
I don't know how I'm giving off that vibe.
My wife thought, man, it's probably a kidney stone. And sure enough, I started just like feeling the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, right? It's like somebody who had a bat to my back and was just like, going to town. I was in so much pain. We rushed to the hospital, got our neighbors to watch the kids, go to the hospital. And sure enough, it's a kidney stone that's fairly big, not ginormous, but big enough.
Yeah.
And I was bedridden for like a few weeks with just nausea and the pain medication and everything. I couldn't paint. I couldn't do a whole lot. It was just awful, terrible experience. And during those weeks that I was in bed, guess what our neighbors did? People around in our neighborhood.
Baked some bread and brought it over.
They baked bread and they brought it over to our home.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is ironic. This is ridiculous. Like this is about like I was doing a piece about us serving.
Yeah,
it was
it's
total
a
full
circle of service. Yeah.
It was huge. It was amazing to realize like, no.
Be prepared to receive.
You're the one that needs to receive something, and you need to let other people serve, and we were the beneficiaries of service. And so that painting took on a whole new meaning, because I wasn't painting that about us going and serving other people. It was like, no, this is because I was a recipient of the kindness of other people. And so many people came to our aid, because I was kind of just like, I was out of commission for a while, and my wife's chasing the kids around, and so many people came to our aid, and I was like, okay, this is...
I'll tell a lot of young artists this. When you start developing a nomenclature and stuff like that, continue to use it. It's like the overture in a film or something like that. You have to come back to those notes that everybody hears. It's great if you're trying to come up with something new every single time. Awesome, exhausting, and a public can't keep up with you. You want to have people have time to discover who you are, what you're doing, and be able to say, when he does bread, let me tell you a story about, then the people that are following you, and, they're becoming your best advocates in helping to tell your story, because you're kind of repeating these themes through and through. And so I sit there and say, stick with bread. Have that be one of your things. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to have in there. But again, you've got a lot more in this show. We're, again, putting together a simple still life, Gethsemane. Mm-hmm. Layers and layers.
Yes.
Oils, where the oils come from.
The idea of olives and where they come from, how they're developed, how they're grown. Mm-hmm. The time that it takes, the effort that it takes to just like even have olives is pretty amazing. And then when they do grow, right, the process of getting the oil out is arduous. Yeah. When I was in Italy, where olive trees are everywhere in Italy, right? They're
a lot older than people think.
It was so old, and so just there's this ancient element about them, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's again timeless. When I learned what it took to like actually make olives that you can eat, I was like, goodness gracious, this takes forever. Like, how does anyone make any money in this? Like,
it's a generational thing.
Generational. Yeah. So the olives as the olive press, how you get the olive, the extra virgin olive oil out, what it looks like. There are so many symbols to the olives and the olive tree that just speak, again, the Savior over and over again. And so this Gethsemane piece that I worked on a few years ago, I was thinking about, okay, what still life am I going to work on for this specific, again, it was for a spiritual religious show at Springville Museum of Art. I was like, what do I want to do with this? What do I want to say? And the idea of just a bowl of olives, which we all have, it's something you see all the time, and the olive oil next to it. But I loved like just these subtle reminders. I put it on a red cloth. I have a few different cloths, some with some red stripes, some with some blue stripes. And I was like, oh, this red stripe will mean something to some people. Yeah. That will like hint at those that are thinking deeply. And others that just see it as like, hey, this is a cool bowl of olives. I love olives. And so I set that still life of. I actually had it set up in my classroom. So I had it like there. I painted it in front of my students sometimes and worked on it. And it was a lot of fun. And it also meant a lot to me. And
Great for the students to see you working on a piece and then have it show up in a museum.
right. Yeah, that was fun. And I got to celebrate with them about that. And that was one of the pieces that I ended up getting an award at the show, which I was like, hey, that's awesome. Guys, that piece that I was working on that you guys saw, guess what? It not only got in, but an award. And they were like, oh, good job, Pac. Nice job. So, yeah, that was fun.
Excellent.
And the Expadio piece kind of harkens back to that Ron Richmond piece that I saw. Yeah. It was a huge influence on me.
I was thinking that when you were mentioning that before.
Yeah. I love his work so much, and I had this thought long before I painted it. Of his was more about the Trinity and the idea of like the Holy Ghost and Christ and the Father and this kind of progression, baptism. His was a lot about that. Mine was more as I was thinking about bowls, and I had this idea of like, what if you had like just mucky, grimy water that was just like you couldn't fix it. It was just gross. And somehow, through a bowl of blood, that water becomes pure.
Pure. Yeah.
And so I was very influenced with his piece, but I also wanted to be a little bit more emphatic about the atonement and the idea of this, the suffering. And so I went in the backyard. We were living at my grandpa's, my wife's grandpa's house, and taking care of him at the time. And in his backyard, he had a giant Russian olive, huge. I hated the stupid tree. It was terrible. It was so awful. Just spines that would just rip your clothes. You couldn't go around it. It hurt. It was just the worst tree. And he'd talk about how he wanted to rip that thing out for years, but he never did. And I was like, hey, I have a Russian olive in my backyard. That's like, again, Jesus. And I pulled off a piece. And I set it down, and I was like, this is going to tie this together a little bit more. This is going to make it a little bit more obvious, even though some people still don't get it.
Yeah. It's the first piece of yours. I'll say I think I saw one or two of your other still lifes, but when I saw that one, I was like, okay, he's doing something really cool here, and it's an awesome still life, but he's really layering these things up. And it's the first time it kind of did the double take. I was like, oh, wow, I think I understand this guy's really kind of living in a space that is good to discover. Because like I say, it's great to see a great painting. You're an awesome technician, but layer in the storytelling, and that's art.
Thank you.
That's really... you were talking about your grandfather's yard or your wife's grandfather. The pears and a lot of the fruit comes from this concept.
That experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely.
Walk us through that.
So my wife's grandfather was he was in his late 80s, and he was in a pretty awful car accident. He was a goer. He didn't stop. Like, he was 80. He had been a widow for 20 years, but nothing stopped him. He was just a stubborn guy from Alberta. Like, just, and he eventually had this terrible accident driving back home to South Jordan from Arizona, and somebody needed to take care of him. He had been in rehab. He broke like every bone in his body. Just a horrible experience. And somebody needed to come in and take care of him. Me and my wife were living in Provo. I was actually serving as an LDS bishop at the time. So we were working hard and busy, and we had just barely had our first child. And
so you really need to take something on.
So my wife, so we're like, why don't we just do more? But my wife just had this really strong feeling like, hey, we should think about maybe going and moving in with him. So we went and we moved in with him. And it was initially really, really hard. It was tough on my wife, especially because she's taking care of an 80-year-old man and doing a lot for him and taking care of the house and everything and all of his medication and trips to the hospital and just everything comes with taking care of the elderly. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But it was such a sacred experience for us. And he happened to have so many fruit trees in his backyard. So many. He had different kinds of pears, Asian pears, Bartlett's. He had a big apricot tree. He had peach trees, just an orchard, tons of them. And this was at the time where I was kind of beginning my art career. Like it was starting to evolve into something that could potentially be like a consistent thing instead of just a random painting every once in a while. Yeah. And my wife really encouraged me. And there was fruit in abundance to paint. It was always there. And I loved going out there and picking the pears right off the tree before they get like that weird texture that I don't like in pears. But then like right off the tree, it's more like an apple where they're nice and crisp. Yeah. I love that. And me and my little boy, we'd walk out there, we'd eat the pears, we'd eat the peaches. And so I just started painting them because they were there and they were beautiful. Yeah. They were pretty. But now every time I paint a pear, I think of that experience. We were with him for 4 years before he passed, and that sacred experience is always part of every time I paint a pear. My thoughts are always going back to that moment.
That's great. That's a really great story. So, again, you kind of have a couple major themes that you're working with, or it seems like when you encounter one, you start working that into the nomenclature of what you're going to see in what you're doing as well. You have a piece called Empty that is, again, really personal, but the second the story comes out, there's universal nature to it.
Yes. So my dad passed away. I think it's been 11 years now. He passed away in 2015. But even up until the end of his life, he really struggled with depression, with mental illness. And that was something that was part of his adult life pretty much from like 40 years old. And it was hard. It was hard. My dad's always been the most like life of the party, vibrant, very successful. I mean, he was an emergency medicine doctor and just had like a photographic memory. The guy was just...
be an artist.
Oh, he was an athlete. He was a great provider, a perfect dad, like just so supportive. Just my best friend. And so during the end of his life, it was really hard to see somebody become a shell of the person they were, right? Like he's the shell of the man that he used to be. That phrase was always in my mind because he wasn't the man that people met or talked to or that saw. I was like, no, you got to know who my dad was when he was in his 20s and 30s, because he was a different person. Even though he was a great dad and a great father all the way up until the end of his life. But when he passed, it was a freeing experience for my whole family and for him. We had faith that he was in a much better place than he was in life. And in fact, the hospital social worker there when we were kind of deciding what we were going to do because he had been in a coma, so we kind of had to make some hard decisions. Yeah, they weren't hard to make for my family, and they were surprised.
But they were hard decisions.
They were hard decisions in the outcome, right? But they weren't that hard to make. In fact, they were very surprised that we were kind of like all in agreement. It's time. We're okay with this. We're not. No one was fighting or holding back. There wasn't any drama between our family. It was like, no, this is time. This is okay. And because we knew that he was going to be so much better off than in the life that he was living right then. And so that fast forward about a year later, a couple of years later, I had just gotten married and was thinking about entering some pieces into the spiritual and religious show, and was thinking about how could I paint something that really like spoke to the ideas that I had about my dad. And me and my wife, again, talking together as a team, came up with the idea of eggshells and eggs, and the shell of the person that he used to be was kind of this idea. So we set it up. I thought about it, how I could portray this idea of like death, and yet also this idea of rebirth.
Yeah.
And the shell made perfect sense, because it was like, oh yeah, like, a bird leaves the shell, all that's left is just a shell, and then this bird like, goes off to fly away or whatever, and leave this like remnant. And so I started painting it, started thinking about how to compose it, and then as I'm painting it, I'm thinking like white. I'm thinking about what do I put it on? Well, I'll put it on this kind of very pure white space. And then I'm looking at the shells and thinking about there's nothing left. It's empty.
Yeah.
And again, it was this kind of revelation moment of like, oh, this isn't about your dad. Although it is about your dad. Yeah. But it's also speaking to what was empty, what is left, what was just kind of like there and was this very sad and hard experience and turns into this beautiful experience. And I was like, hey, this is Jesus. This is the Savior. And so, yeah, I was excited to paint it. It hangs in my home. It's one I'll never sell. Yeah. You sell prints of it, I think.
We do sell prints of it.
But it hangs in my home, and it's just a constant reminder of my dad, which it really was originally about, and that's who I always think of when I look at it. But it's also like the joy of knowing that not only is he like escaped this life, but it's because of who gave his life, and the resurrection behind like this idea of like, yeah, there's something far better for him because of what was left empty. What's an empty tomb? Yeah. And so again, I just it's always going back to the Savior, like always. It's awesome. I love it.
It's incredible that you got to go through this, I'm going to call it cathartic process, step into many cathartic processes. Right. As the artist creating it, how does art work for the person that needs it? How do I find, wow, I'm feeling this loss. How do I find empty and get that story? Because that's the thing that, that's the beauty of it. Everyone who just got to listen to this gets to hear what that's about. Go, wow, this is, and I can give this to you now and be like, hey, here's a piece of artwork, and I'm going to give you the story of what's behind it and why it means this, and I think it'll help you. How do we get that to happen?
I don't know. It's obviously a piece that was extremely personal to me. I think that I've done other pieces similar to that. I did one that was bigger, and I sold it, and I asked the guy, because I was really curious. Yeah. I asked him, I said, why do you like this so much? Because most people just kind of look at it as this like, oh, it's an egg.
It's food art.
It's it's interesting. But why the eggs? And he was perceptive enough to look at it and be like, that makes me think of like eternity. Like there's something that's beyond this. And he like said, I just love the like reverence of it and the simplicity of it. And I was like, cool. Like, I'm glad to give it to you now, because you've tapped into that a little bit. And so, yeah, I hope that my artwork can, and I've tried to make it so that it can speak to a lot of people in a different way. That egg piece, That's a hard one to do it unless you understand the story behind it.
But one of the best stories.
Right.
The more I'm a deep believer in, the more intensely personal the subject that the artist creates, the more universal it has the ability to be in its reception.
Yeah, because we're all the same.
Yeah.
When it boils down, we all deal with the same.
How many people go, kidney stones? I can't tell you about my kidney stone. You never hear about it until you have it.
Yeah, and then you realize everybody's had one.
And everyone's had one. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, here we got the kidney stone club we go to.
Yes,
Yeah. So looking forward to having this show at the gallery. Haven Light Gallery, it's going to be there from, what's the Thursday night, the 5th?
Yeah, here in a couple days.
Technically, from the 5th, it kind of opens, and we'll be there through the entire month. You're going to be coming to the gallery a couple times during the month. You'll be there on the 5th for the opening.
Yes.
You're going to be kind of painting artists in residence in the gallery for 1 or 2 days. When's that going to be?
I think that's the 20th and 21st.
20th and 21st. And we also have a paint night with you as well.
Yeah, I'll be teaching everybody how to paint a pear. Of all things, right?
Awesome. We'll paint a pear from your grandfather's.
Yes.
Well, actually, probably don't have any more of those right now.
No, but we still love pears. We still love to paint them.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you for having come in today. Looking forward to having you in again and again. And my last thought that I have walking away is you have empty. I'd like to know what full is. And just plant that with you at the end of the thing. Yeah. So come up with full.
I will. Thank you. It's a good challenge.
Yeah, good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
I'm Scott Usher. I'm the creative director at Haven Light, and this has been Haven Light Artist Spotlight with Tyler Pack. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.